The sun filtered through half-drawn curtains in a modest apartment on the edge of town. A woman in her late 20s sat at the kitchen table, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other clutching a crumpled note. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying all night. The apartment, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt hollow and cold. Just yesterday, her world had been complete. She and her husband of 4 years had been preparing for the arrival of their first child. They had painted the nursery a soft yellow, assembled the crib together, and spent evenings discussing names for their baby boy. But now, everything had changed. The note was brief, almost cruel in its simplicity. "I can't do this anymore. I've found someone else. I'm sorry." Those few words had shattered her reality, leaving her alone with her unborn child and a future she couldn't begin to imagine. His name was Robert, a software engineer with a kind smile and steady hands. They had met at a friend's wedding 5 years ago. She had been a bridesmaid, he a childhood friend of the groom. Their connection had been immediate, the kind people write songs about. Within a year, they were married in a small ceremony by the lake where they had their first date. Her name was Priya, a kindergarten teacher who loved children and had always dreamed of having a family of her own. When she discovered she was pregnant after 3 years of marriage, it felt like the final piece of their perfect life falling into place. But perfect wasn't what it seemed. 2 streets away, in an upscale apartment building with a doorman and a view of the city, Robert unpacked his hastily gathered belongings. A woman moved around him, helping to organize his clothes in her closet, making space in her life for him. Her name was Lisa, and she worked at the same company as Robert. She was beautiful, ambitious, and uncomplicated by the responsibilities that had begun to weigh on him. "Do you think I did the right thing?" Robert asked as he placed a framed photo face down in a drawer. Lisa wrapped her arms around him from behind. "You can't force yourself to be happy, Robert. Sometimes we have to make hard choices to find our true path." But even as she reassured him, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of his mind. The image of Priya sitting alone in their apartment haunted him. The knowledge that his child would grow up without him present left a hollow feeling in his chest. Still, he pushed these thoughts away. This was his new life now. There was no going back. Back in the small apartment, Priya finally set down the note and wiped her tears. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby kick beneath her palms. "It's just you and me now, little one," she whispered. "But we're going to be okay." She didn't know how she would manage alone, financially, emotionally, or practically. But she knew she had to find strength for her child's sake. That afternoon, she called her parents, her voice breaking as she explained what had happened. They immediately offered to come stay with her, at least until the baby was born. "He left me, Mom," she sobbed into the phone. "After everything we planned together. How could he just walk away from us?" Her mother's voice was steady and comforting, a lifeline across the miles. "Some people aren't ready for the responsibility, sweetheart. But you are stronger than you know, and you won't be doing this alone. We'll help you through this." The next few weeks passed in a blur of practical arrangements. Priya's parents arrived, helping her reorganize her life. Her father, a retired accountant, helped her sort through the finances. Her mother accompanied her to doctor's appointments, holding her hand as they listened to the baby's heartbeat, filling the space where Robert should have been. Friends rallied around her, bringing home-cooked meals and offering support. Her best friend organized a baby shower, filling the apartment with laughter for the first time since Robert had left. Surrounded by people who loved her, Priya began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they would be all right. Robert, meanwhile, settled into his new life with Lisa. At first, everything seemed perfect. They stayed out late, traveled on weekends, and enjoyed the freedom of a relationship without responsibilities. He told himself he was happier this way, that he'd made the right choice. But as Priya's due date approached, his dreams became troubled. He would wake in the middle of the night, thinking about the child he would never know. During quiet moments at work, he would find himself wondering whether the baby had been born yet, if it was healthy, if it looked like him. Lisa noticed the change in him. "You're distracted lately," she observed one evening as they sat on her balcony, drinking wine. "Is everything okay?" "Just work stress," he lied, but they both knew it was more than that. The truth was, Robert was beginning to question his decision. The excitement of his new relationship was wearing off, revealing the selfish impulse that had driven his actions. In quiet moments of honesty, he admitted to himself that he had run away out of fear of responsibility, fear of failure, fear of the profound life change that parenthood represented. When Priya went into labor, she clutched her mother's hand instead of her husband's. After 14 hours, she delivered a healthy baby boy with a full head of dark hair and his father's eyes. As she held her son for the first time, tears streamed down her face, tears of joy mixed with sadness that Robert wasn't there to witness this miracle they had created together. She named the baby Aiden, a name that meant little fire, because despite everything, he had brought light back into her world. 3 days after Aiden was born, as Priya was preparing to take him home from the hospital, her phone lit up with a text message from a number she had once known by heart. "I heard our son was born. Is he healthy? Are you okay?" Priya stared at the screen, her heart racing. After a long moment, she put the phone away without responding. Robert had made his choice. Now she was making hers. 6 months had passed since Aiden's birth. Priya had settled into a routine that revolved entirely around her son. The early morning feedings, afternoon naps, and endless diaper changes had become her new normal. Her parents had returned home after 3 months, confident that their daughter had found her footing as a single mother. The small apartment now overflowed with baby items, a bouncer in the living room, bottles drying on the kitchen counter, tiny clothes folded in baskets waiting to be put away. Priya had transformed their former spare bedroom into a nursery, painting over the yellow walls Robert had helped with and choosing a calming blue instead. It was her way of reclaiming the space, of moving forward. She had returned to teaching part-time at the kindergarten, finding a reliable daycare for Aiden on the days she worked. Her colleagues had been understanding and supportive, adjusting her schedule to accommodate her new life. The children in her class brought her joy, but nothing compared to coming home to Aiden's toothless smile. On a crisp autumn afternoon, as Priya pushed Aiden's stroller through the neighborhood park, a familiar figure appeared on the path ahead. Her heart seemed to stop as Robert approached, hesitant and unsure. This was the first time they had seen each other since he walked out. "Priya," he said simply, his eyes immediately drawn to the stroller where Aiden slept peacefully. She gripped the stroller handle tighter. "What are you doing here?" "I live nearby now," he explained. "Lisa and we broke up. I've been trying to get the courage to reach out." Priya felt a rush of conflicting emotions, anger, hurt, and a surprising flicker of satisfaction that his new relationship hadn't worked out. "Well, now you have," she replied coolly. "Is there something you wanted?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "I'd like to see him. He's my son too." The words hit Priya like a slap. After months of absence, after missing the birth and the sleepless nights and the first smile, he wanted to waltz back into their lives. "You gave up that right when you walked out on us," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know I made a terrible mistake," Robert admitted, his eyes filled with regret. "I got scared. The responsibility, the permanence of it all, I panicked. But I've had time to think, and I want to make things right. I want to be part of his life." Priya looked down at Aiden, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the drama unfolding around him. "I need time to think about this," she finally said. "This isn't just about you and me anymore." She gave Robert her phone number, she had changed it after he left, and told him she would contact him once she'd made a decision. As she watched him walk away, shoulders slumped, she felt a strange emptiness. The man she had once loved, the father of her child, now felt like a stranger. That evening, after putting Aiden to bed, Priya called her best friend, Nadia, to seek advice. "He has some nerve showing up like that," Nadia said indignantly. "After everything he put you through." "I know," Priya sighed. "But Aiden deserves to know his father, doesn't he? I don't want my son growing up wondering why his dad didn't want him." "But can you trust Robert?" Nadia asked. "What if he decides it's too much again and disappears? That would hurt Aiden more than never knowing him at all." It was a question Priya couldn't answer. That night, she barely slept, weighing her options and considering what would be best for her son in the long run. Meanwhile, Robert returned to his new apartment, a modest one-bedroom, nothing like the sleek place he had shared with Lisa. Their relationship had crumbled within months. The excitement had faded quickly, replaced by arguments and a growing sense of regret. Lisa had grown tired of his distraction, his guilt, and eventually, his depression. They had parted ways 3 months ago, and since then, Robert had been trying to rebuild his life. He had started seeing a therapist, trying to understand the fear that had driven him to abandon his family. He had taken a demotion at work to reduce his stress and give him more time to focus on personal growth. Now, he was determined to be the father and man he should have been from the beginning, if Priya would give him the chance. 2 weeks after their encounter in the park, Priya texted Robert. "You can come see Aiden this Saturday. 2 p.m. 1 hour. When Saturday arrived, Robert showed up 30 minutes early, waiting nervously outside their building. He had brought a small stuffed elephant, nothing extravagant, but something he hoped his son might grow to cherish. The meeting was awkward and tense. Aiden, now alert and curious about the world around him, regarded Robert with the indifference of a baby who sees no difference between strangers. Priya remained guarded, watching Robert's every move as he tentatively held Aiden for the first time. "He has your eyes," Robert observed quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes," Priya acknowledged. "He does." By the end of the hour, Robert had managed to coax a few smiles from Aiden, and some of the tension had eased. As he prepared to leave, he turned to Priya. "Thank you for this. I know I don't deserve it." "This isn't for you," she clarified. "It's for him. I don't want my own feelings to deprive Aiden of knowing his father, as long as you're serious about being in his life consistently." "I am," Robert promised. "I've learned the hard way what matters most. I'll never disappear on him again." Priya nodded, not entirely convinced but willing to give him the opportunity to prove himself. "We'll see. Same time next week." Over the following months, these Saturday visits became a regular occurrence. Robert never missed one, always arriving early, always bringing a small, thoughtful gift. Gradually, the visits extended from 1 hour to 2, then to half-days. Aiden began to recognize his father, reaching for him with chubby hands and babbling excitedly when he arrived. For Priya, watching this relationship develop was bittersweet. Part of her was happy that Aiden would have his father in his life, but another part remained wary, waiting for Robert to revert to his old ways. She kept a careful emotional distance, limiting their conversations to Aiden's needs and development. As Aiden's first birthday approached, Robert asked if he could help with the celebration. "Nothing big," he assured her. "I just want to be there. To help. To be part of the milestone." Priya hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. But this doesn't change anything between us. We're co-parents now, not a couple." Robert accepted this boundary with grace. "I understand. I'm just grateful for the chance to be part of his life." The first tentative steps toward a new kind of family were being taken, but the road ahead remained uncertain. Aiden's second birthday came and went, then his third. The little boy with Robert's eyes and Priya's smile was growing up fast, his personality emerging more clearly each day. He was energetic and curious, always asking why and rarely sitting still for long. His vocabulary expanded rapidly, and he loved nothing more than being read to before bedtime. By this point, Robert had become a consistent presence in his son's life. The Saturday visits had expanded to include occasional weeknight dinners and even a few overnight stays at Robert's apartment, which now had a dedicated room for Aiden with dinosaur decals on the walls and a toddler bed shaped like a race car. For Priya, the past 3 years had been a journey of personal growth. The pain of Robert's betrayal had gradually dulled from a sharp, constant ache to an occasional twinge. She had found strength she never knew she possessed and built a life she was proud of. She had been promoted to lead teacher at her kindergarten, and her natural talent with children had only been enhanced by her experience as a mother. On a warm spring evening, as Robert dropped Aiden off after their Saturday together, the little boy rushed inside to show his mother the model airplane they had built. "We flew it in the park, Mommy. It went so high," Aiden exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement. "That sounds amazing, sweetie," Priya replied, smiling at her son's enthusiasm. "Why don't you go put it on your shelf while I talk to your dad for a minute?" As Aiden scampered off to his room, Priya turned to Robert. "He had a good time?" "The best," Robert confirmed. "He's getting really good at following instructions. That kid has some serious focus when he's interested in something." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, something that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. Their conversations had evolved from tense exchanges about schedules and Aiden's needs to genuine discussions about parenting approaches and their son's development. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something," Robert said hesitantly. "I've been offered a promotion at work. It would mean more money, which I could put toward Aiden's education fund. But also more responsibility." "That's great," Priya said sincerely. "You've worked hard for it." "Thanks," Robert replied, "but I wanted to make sure it wouldn't interfere with our arrangements for Aiden. I'd never want him to think work was more important than him." The irony of this statement wasn't lost on either of them. 3 years ago, Robert had run from responsibility. Now he was seeking reassurance that his career advancement wouldn't compromise his commitment to his son. "We'll make it work," Priya assured him. "Aiden knows you're there for him." As Robert prepared to leave, he paused. "Actually, there's something else. I've been seeing someone for a few months now. Her name's Teresa. She's a graphic designer. I think it might be getting serious." Priya felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach at this news. "Oh," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "That's good. I'm happy for you." "I haven't introduced her to Aiden yet," Robert added quickly. "I wanted to talk to you first. I know how important it is that we're on the same page about these things." Priya appreciated this consideration. Over the years, she had gone on a few dates herself, but nothing had developed into a serious relationship. Between work and motherhood, she hadn't prioritized her romantic life. "I think it's fine for Aiden to meet her, as long as you're sure about her," Priya said after a moment's thought. "But maybe start with a short meeting, something casual. See how they interact." Robert nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you, Priya. For everything. For being so reasonable about all of this." After he left, Priya sat alone in the kitchen, processing her feelings. Was she truly okay with Robert moving on? With another woman potentially becoming part of Aiden's life? She had to be, she decided. It was inevitable and probably healthy for all of them. The following weekend, Aiden met Teresa during a brief ice cream outing. The meeting went well by all accounts, with Aiden chattering happily about his favorite flavors and Teresa showing him how to draw simple cartoon characters on napkins. Over the next few months, Teresa occasionally joined Robert and Aiden during their time together. Priya maintained her distance, learning about these outings through Aiden's excited recountings. Teresa seemed kind and patient with him, which was all Priya could hope for. Summer arrived, bringing with it Aidan's first experience at day camp. He came home each day covered in dirt and full of stories about new friends and activities. Robert and Priya coordinated drop-offs and pickups, their co-parenting routine now well established and relatively smooth. On a particularly hot July afternoon, Priya received an unexpected call from the camp. Aidan had fallen from the jungle gym and hurt his arm. By the time she arrived at the emergency room, Robert was already there. He had been closer when the call came in. "How is he?" Priya asked, slightly breathless from rushing. "The doctor thinks it might be fractured," Robert explained, his face tight with worry. "They're taking him for X-rays now." They sat side by side in the waiting room, their shared concern for their child bridging any remaining awkwardness between them. When the doctor confirmed that Aidan had indeed fractured his wrist and would need a cast, they worked together seamlessly, Priya comforting Aidan while Robert handled the paperwork and insurance details. By the time they left the hospital, Aidan was proudly showing off his blue cast and already collecting signatures from the hospital staff. The three of them stopped for ice cream on the way home, and for a brief moment, they felt like a family. Back at the apartment, as Aidan dozed on the couch, exhausted from his ordeal, Robert and Priya sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. "You know," Robert said quietly, "I think about it sometimes. What would have happened if I'd stayed? If I hadn't been such a coward?" Priya looked at him thoughtfully. "We can't change the past, Robert. But I think maybe things worked out the way they needed to." "How do you mean?" "You weren't ready then. Maybe we wouldn't have made it anyway, and it would have been worse for Aidan to grow up with parents who resented each other. At least now we've found a way to be good parents to him, even if we're not together." Robert nodded slowly. "You're probably right. Still, I'll always regret hurting you." "I know," Priya said simply. "But we've all come a long way." As Robert prepared to leave, he mentioned that Teresa had invited Aidan to her studio the following weekend to try some art projects. "Would that be okay with you?" he asked. "Of course," Priya replied. "Aidan would love that." Watching Robert drive away, Priya realized how much their relationship had evolved. The man who had once broken her heart was now someone she trusted with their son's well-being, a co-parent she could rely on in an emergency. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something like peace. Aidan was 4 years old now, his personality fully blooming. He had inherited Priya's artistic talent and Robert's analytical mind, a combination that made him both creative and methodical in his approach to the world. He loved building elaborate Lego structures and could spend hours carefully arranging blocks into towers and bridges that showed surprising structural understanding for his age. Priya had settled into a comfortable routine as a working single mother. Her apartment, once a painful reminder of Robert's departure, had become a warm home filled with Aidan's artwork and photographs documenting his growth. She had repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and reclaimed the space as truly hers. The school where she taught had become like a second family, with colleagues who understood the challenges she faced and supported her through difficult days. As for Robert, his relationship with Teresa had continued to develop. After a year of dating, they had moved in together, creating a space where Aidan felt welcome during his stays. Teresa, with her patient demeanor and creative spirit, had formed a genuine bond with Aidan, careful never to overstep or try to replace Priya's role as his mother. One crisp September morning, as Priya dropped Aidan off for his first day of pre-kindergarten, she was surprised to see Robert already there. "I didn't want to miss this," he explained with a sheepish smile. "Hope that's okay." Priya nodded, touched by his dedication. "Of course. I'm sure Aidan will be happy to have both of us here." Their son, clutching his new backpack with dinosaurs printed on it, seemed unfazed by the momentous occasion. He was more interested in the colorful classroom and the other children than in his parents' emotional reactions to this milestone. After they had said their goodbyes and watched Aiden confidently join a group of children at the building block station, Priya and Robert walked out to the parking lot together. "He didn't even look back," Priya said, half laughing, half sighing. "That's a good thing, right? Means we've raised a secure kid." "Yeah, I guess so." Priya glanced at her watch. "I should get to work." "Actually," Robert said, "I wanted to talk to you about something." "Do you have time for coffee?" Curious, Priya agreed. They found a small cafe near the preschool and settled into a quiet corner table. "So what's up?" Priya asked after they had ordered. Robert took a deep breath. "Teresa and I are getting married." The words hung in the air between them. Priya felt an odd sensation in her chest, not quite pain, not quite nostalgia, something indefinable. "Congratulations," she said finally, and meant it. "When's the wedding?" "Next spring. We're keeping it small. And Priya, we'd really like Aiden to be part of it. As a ring bearer, maybe. But only if you're comfortable with that." Priya considered this. 4 years ago, the thought of her son participating in Robert's wedding to another woman would have been unbearable. Now, it seemed right, somehow. Teresa had been nothing but kind to Aiden, and it was clear that she genuinely cared for him. "I think Aiden would love that," she said. "And I appreciate you asking me first." Relief washed over Robert's face. "Thank you. That means a lot to both of us." As they finished their coffee, Robert hesitated, then added, "There's something else. Teresa and I are thinking about buying a house. Something with a yard for Aiden to play in. We found a place we like, it's about 30 minutes from here." Priya felt a flicker of concern. "That's a bit further than your current apartment." "I know," Robert acknowledged. "But it's a great neighborhood with excellent schools. I'd adjust our schedule, maybe take him Thursday nights through Saturday instead of just weekends, to make the distance worth it. And of course, I'd still handle all the transportation." They discussed the logistics, working through potential challenges. By the time they parted ways, they had sketched out a plan that seemed workable for everyone. That evening, as Priya listened to Aiden chatter excitedly about his first day of pre-kindergarten, she reflected on how far they had all come. The pain of Robert's betrayal had faded to a dull memory, replaced by a practical partnership focused on their son's well-being. The weeks passed, and autumn deepened around them. Aiden thrived in pre-kindergarten, making friends easily and impressing his teachers with his creativity and focus. Robert began bringing him home on Thursday evenings as planned, and the new schedule quickly became routine. One Thursday in late October, when Robert came to pick up Aiden, he arrived with Teresa. This wasn't unusual, she occasionally joined him for pickups now. What was unusual was the nervous energy between them. "Is everything okay?" Priya asked as Aiden ran to get his overnight bag. "Actually," Teresa said, speaking up for the first time, "we wanted to share some news with you in person before Aiden finds out." She exchanged a glance with Robert, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm pregnant. We're having a baby in the spring." Priya's eyes widened. This news hit differently than the engagement announcement. A sibling for Aiden, a half-sibling, would change his world in ways none of them could fully anticipate. "That's, wow," Priya managed. "Congratulations. We wanted to tell you first," Robert explained, "so we could discuss how to tell Aiden together. We want him to be excited about being a big brother, not confused or worried." Teresa added softly, "This won't change anything about how much we love Aiden. I hope you know that." Priya nodded, appreciating their consideration. "When do you plan to tell him?" "We thought maybe this weekend," Robert suggested. "With both of us there to answer his questions. Would you be willing to join us? I think it would help him if he sees that we're all on the same page." It was a thoughtful request, acknowledging that this news affected their entire unconventional family. Priya agreed, and they made plans for her to come to Robert and Teresa's apartment on Saturday afternoon. That night, after Aidan had left with Robert and Teresa, Priya sat alone in her quiet apartment. She tried to untangle her feelings about the pregnancy news. There was no jealousy or resentment, which surprised her. Instead, she felt concern for Aidan and how he would adjust to sharing his father with another child. There was also a wistfulness, a soft acknowledgement that Robert had truly moved on and created a new life that ran parallel to, but separate from, the life they had once planned together. She picked up a framed photo of Aidan from her coffee table, her smiling boy on his 3rd birthday, blowing out candles with chubby cheeks puffed out in concentration. Everything she had done since Robert left had been for him, to ensure he felt secure and loved despite the fracture in his family's foundation. Now, as their family structure prepared to shift again, she made a silent promise to help Aidan navigate this new chapter with the same steadiness and grace she had cultivated over the past 4 years. If there was one thing Priya had learned through this journey, it was that family could take many forms, and what mattered most was the love that flowed through its changing shape. Winter melted into spring, and with the changing season came significant shifts in all their lives. Robert and Teresa had purchased the house they'd been considering, a charming 2-story home with a fenced backyard and a maple tree perfect for a future swing. They had moved in just after the new year, with Aidan excitedly claiming his new room and helping to decorate it with space-themed wallpaper. The pregnancy was progressing well, with Teresa now visibly showing. Aidan had taken the news of becoming a big brother with enthusiasm after their carefully planned family discussion. He had endless questions about the baby, most beginning with, "When the baby comes, can I?" His questions ranged from practical, "Can I help give the baby a bath?" to ambitious, "Can I teach the baby how to build Lego spaceships?" Priya had surprised herself with how genuinely supportive she felt toward Teresa during this time. When Teresa experienced severe morning sickness in her 2nd trimester, Priya had even offered to take Aidan for extra days to give her time to rest. The two women weren't close friends, but they had developed a respectful relationship built on their shared care for Aidan. As for Priya's personal life, an unexpected development had occurred shortly after New Year's. She had reconnected with Dev, an old friend from college who had recently moved back to town after working abroad for several years. He had a daughter named Lily from a previous relationship, just a year older than Aidan. They had bumped into each other at a children's science museum, both there with their children on a rainy Saturday. What started as coffee to catch up had evolved into dinner, then regular weekend outings with the children, who got along remarkably well. Dev was kind, patient, and understood the complexities of single parenthood. For the first time since Robert had left, Priya found herself open to the possibility of a serious relationship. One evening in late March, as Priya and Dev sat on her sofa after the children had fallen asleep during a movie night, Lily was staying over for a sleepover with Aidan. Dev took her hand gently. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft so as not to wake the kids curled up on the living room floor in their sleeping bags. "We've been taking things slow, which has been perfect. But I want you to know I'm serious about us, about building something real together. If you're ready." Priya squeezed his hand, warmth spreading through her chest. "I think I am ready," she replied. "Aidan adores you and Lily. And I." She smiled, "I more than adore you." As spring progressed, their families became increasingly intertwined. Robert noticed the change in Priya, a lightness in her step, a new sparkle in her eyes, and was genuinely happy for her. The thought of Aidan having another positive male figure in his life, as well as a friend like Lily, seemed like a blessing rather than a threat to his role as father. In April, Robert and Teresa were married in a small ceremony in the garden of their new home. As planned, Aidan served as ring bearer, solemnly carrying a small pillow with the rings down a petal-strewn path. Priya attended with Dev, watching with a peaceful heart as Robert began this new chapter. The couple had decided not to honeymoon until after the baby was born, instead focusing on preparing their home for the new arrival. May arrived, bringing with it Teresa's due date and Aidan's 5th birthday, which fell in the same week. They planned to celebrate Aidan's birthday the weekend before, in case the baby decided to make an early appearance. The birthday party was held at Robert and Teresa's house, with a space-themed cake, Aidan's current obsession, and a rented bouncy castle in the backyard. Friends from pre-kindergarten came with their parents, filling the yard with laughter and excited shrieks. Priya, Robert, and Teresa worked together seamlessly to organize games and serve food, while Dev manned the grill, perfectly comfortable in this blended family gathering. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Teresa suddenly grabbed Robert's arm, her face tensing in pain. "I think," she gasped, "I think the baby's coming." The next few minutes were a flurry of activity. Robert called the doctor while helping Teresa to the car. Priya quickly stepped in, assuring them she would stay to clean up and look after Aidan. "Call us as soon as there's news," she said as they headed for the hospital. After the last guests had left, Priya, Dev, and the children cleaned up the party debris, working together like a well-oiled machine. Aidan was full of questions about his baby brother or sister. They had decided not to find out the gender beforehand, and Lily was equally curious, never having experienced the arrival of a sibling. That evening, as the children built a blanket fort in Aidan's room, Priya's phone rang. It was Robert, his voice thick with emotion. "It's a girl," he announced. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. "Teresa's doing great." "That's wonderful," Priya said warmly. "Congratulations to both of you." "We're naming her Maya," Robert continued. "And Priya, we'd like Aidan to meet his sister tomorrow, if that works for you." "Of course. He's going to be thrilled." The next morning, Priya drove Aidan to the hospital. He clutched a stuffed rabbit he had selected as a gift for his new sister, barely containing his excitement. In the maternity ward, they found Teresa in bed, cradling a tiny bundle, with Robert seated beside them, looking both exhausted and elated. "Aidan," Robert said softly, "come meet your sister, Maya." Priya watched as her son approached the bed carefully, his eyes wide with wonder. Teresa lowered the baby so he could see her face. "She's so little," Aidan whispered. "You were this little once too," Teresa told him with a smile. "Can I touch her?" "Of course you can. Just be very gentle." Aidan reached out one finger and lightly touched the baby's hand. To everyone's delight, Maya's tiny fingers reflexively curled around her brother's finger. "Look!" Aidan gasped. "She's holding my hand. She likes me." The adults exchanged smiles over his head, sharing in this precious moment. As Priya observed the scene, Robert with his new wife and baby, Aidan meeting his sister for the first time, she felt no resentment or bitterness, only a sense of peace. Their family had evolved in ways none of them could have predicted 5 years ago, yet somehow, it worked. Later that day, as Priya and Aidan prepared to leave, Robert walked them to the hospital elevator. "Thank you," he said to Priya when Aidan was distracted by pressing the elevator button. "For everything. For raising such an amazing kid. For allowing me back into his life after what I did. For being here today." Priya smiled. "We've all come a long way, haven't we?" "We have," Robert agreed. "I never could have imagined we'd end up here when I..." He trailed off, still uncomfortable referencing his abandonment directly. "Sometimes the wrong turn leads to the right destination," Priya said simply. "For all of us." As she and Aidan rode the elevator down, her son chattered excitedly about all the things he would teach Maya when she was bigger. Priya listened, marveling at how life had unfolded. In less than a week, her son would turn 5, marking 5 years since Robert had walked out on them. 5 years of growth, change, pain, and healing. 5 years that had ultimately led to this moment, where broken pieces had reassembled into something new and whole. Summer arrived with blazing heat and the promise of new beginnings. Aiden had completed pre-kindergarten with flying colors and was looking forward to starting kindergarten in the fall. Maya was now 3 months old, growing and changing daily. Dev and Priya's relationship had deepened, becoming a steady source of joy and support in her life. One sweltering July afternoon, Robert called Priya with an unexpected request. "I know this is last minute," he began hesitantly, "but Teresa's parents have invited us to their beach house for the weekend. They're eager to spend time with Maya, and it would be our first little trip as a family. The thing is..." He paused. "You're wondering if Aiden can come," Priya finished for him. "Yes. I know it's your weekend with him, but it would mean a lot if he could join us. Teresa's parents adore him, and they've bought him all these beach toys." Priya considered this. She had been planning a quiet weekend at home with Aiden, maybe visiting the local pool or seeing a children's movie. "Let me talk to him and see what he wants to do," she said finally. When she mentioned the beach trip to Aiden that evening, his eyes lit up with excitement. "Can I go, Mommy? Please. I want to build a huge sandcastle for Maya to see." Seeing his enthusiasm, Priya couldn't say no. "Of course you can go, sweetheart. It sounds like fun." The following morning, Robert picked up Aiden, the car loaded with baby gear, beach equipment, and an excited 5-year-old's weekend bag. Priya waved them off with a smile, then turned to find her suddenly quiet apartment a bit too empty. She called Dev, who suggested they make the most of the child-free weekend with dinner at a restaurant they'd been wanting to try, the kind with cloth napkins and no kids menu. The evening was lovely, a reminder that she was not only a mother but a woman with her own desires and interests. But as Saturday stretched into Sunday, Priya found herself missing Aiden more than expected. She checked her phone frequently for messages from Robert, smiling at the beach photos he sent of Aiden building his promised sandcastle, digging in the wet sand with Teresa's father while Teresa sat under an umbrella with Maya. Sunday evening, as Priya prepared for Aiden's return, her phone rang. It was Robert again, but this time his voice was tense. "Priya, something's happened," he said, his words coming fast. "Teresa collapsed at the beach house. She's in the hospital now. The doctors think it might be a blood clot related to the birth. It's serious." Priya's hand tightened around the phone. "I'm so sorry, Robert. Is there anything I can do?" "Actually, yes. That's why I'm calling. I need to stay here with Teresa, but her parents had to leave. Her father has a heart condition and ran out of medication. They couldn't take Aiden with them. I have Maya with me at the hospital, but I can't manage both kids right now. Could you possibly come get Aiden? We're about 3 hours from the city." "Of course," Priya said without hesitation. "Text me the hospital address. I'll leave right away." She called Dev as she threw together an overnight bag, explaining the situation. He immediately offered to come with her, but she declined. It might be confusing for Aiden with everything going on. "But thank you for offering." The drive to the coastal hospital was long and gave Priya too much time to think. Despite everything that had happened between them, she wouldn't wish this kind of crisis on Robert and his new family. She thought of baby Maya, too young to understand what was happening, and of Teresa, who had only been kind to Aiden. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Robert in the waiting room, cradling a fussing Maya while trying to entertain an increasingly restless Aiden with his tablet. Robert's face was drawn with worry, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Mommy." Aiden ran to her when she appeared, wrapping his arms around her legs. "Hey, buddy," she said, kneeling to hug him properly. "I missed you." Over his head, she met Robert's gaze. "Any news?" Robert shook his head. "They're running more tests. They've got her on blood thinners. The doctor said the next 24 hours are critical." His voice broke slightly on the last word. Priya made a decision in that moment. "Why don't I take both kids? Robert looked startled. Both? Yes. You need to focus on Teresa right now. Aiden already knows our apartment, and I have that portable crib from when Lily stays over. Maya can use that. I couldn't ask you to do that, Robert protested weakly. You're not asking. I'm offering. Priya held out her arms. Give me the baby bag and explain what she needs. Aiden can help me take care of his sister. After some hesitation, Robert agreed. He walked Priya through Maya's feeding schedule, showed her how the baby liked to be held, and packed up the diaper bag with extra supplies. Aiden watched with solemn eyes, unusually quiet as he sensed the gravity of the situation. I'll call you with updates, Robert promised as he gently transferred the sleeping Maya to Priya's arms. And thank you. It's above and beyond. It's what family does, Priya said simply. Even our kind of family. The drive back to the city was challenging, with Maya waking twice and crying until Priya could pull over to soothe her. Aiden tried to help, singing the lullaby he'd heard Teresa use and reaching back to hold his sister's tiny hand. By the time they reached Priya's apartment, it was nearly midnight. Dev was waiting outside with groceries, baby formula, diapers, and essentials for the morning. Together, they set up the portable crib in Priya's room and settled Maya while Aiden, exhausted from the long day, fell asleep almost instantly in his own bed. You're amazing, Dev said quietly as they stood in the kitchen, making a bottle for Maya's nighttime feeding. Most people wouldn't do this for their ex. It's not about Robert, Priya explained. It's about those children. Aiden loves his sister, and Maya deserves to feel safe and cared for while her mother is sick. Throughout the night, Priya woke to feed and change Maya, falling into a rhythm she remembered from Aiden's infancy. By morning, she was exhausted but determined to create a sense of normalcy for both children. Robert called mid-morning with an update. Teresa's condition had stabilized, but she would need to remain hospitalized for at least a few more days. The relief in his voice was palpable. The doctors are more optimistic now, he said. Thank you again for taking the kids. How's Maya doing? She's fine, Priya assured him. Aiden's been a big help. He's showing her all his old baby toys. After hanging up, Priya watched as Aiden sat cross-legged on the living room rug, carefully holding Maya in his lap while showing her a colorful picture book. The baby stared up at her brother with wide, trusting eyes as he pointed to the illustrations and invented stories about each one. The scene stirred something deep in Priya's heart, a complex emotion she couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't jealousy or resentment. It was something more like wistfulness, perhaps, or the recognition of what might have been in another lifetime. But there was beauty in this reality too, she realized. In the unexpected ways their broken family had reformed into something more expansive and inclusive than she could have imagined 5 years ago. 3 days stretched into a week as Teresa's recovery progressed more slowly than expected. The doctors discovered that she had developed a rare complication called postpartum cardiomyopathy, a weakening of the heart muscle that sometimes occurs after childbirth. The initial collapse had been related to this condition rather than a blood clot as first suspected. Priya settled into a routine of caring for both children, with Dev stepping in to help whenever he could. Lily came over after school to play with Aiden, fascinated by the presence of the baby and eager to help with simple tasks like fetching diapers or singing to Maya when she fussed. Robert visited every evening after spending the day at Teresa's bedside. He would arrive looking exhausted but grateful, taking time to play with Aiden and hold Maya, feeding her the evening bottle while updating Priya on Teresa's condition. The doctors say she's improving, but it's going to be a long recovery, he explained one evening as they sat in Priya's living room, Maya sleeping peacefully in his arms. She might need help around the house for weeks, maybe months. And she's not supposed to lift anything heavy, including the baby. Priya nodded, understanding the implications. What are you thinking of doing? Robert sighed, running a hand over his face. Teresa's mother offered to come stay with us, but she works full-time and can only take 2 weeks of leave. I'm already talking to my boss about working remotely as much as possible. And Maya? Priya asked gently. That's the hardest part. Teresa's heartbroken about not being able to care for her. The doctors say the stress isn't good for her recovery, but she keeps worrying about the baby. Priya took a deep breath, then offered what she had been considering for days. What if Maya stays here during the day while you're working? I'm on summer break from teaching for another month. I could watch her along with Aiden. Robert looked up, surprise and relief washing over his face. You would do that? Even after everything? Robert, the past is the past. Right now, Maya needs care, Teresa needs to recover, and you need to keep your job. It's a solution that works for everyone. And so it was decided. Maya would stay with Priya during weekdays while Robert worked. He would pick her up each evening and take both children on weekends once Teresa was home from the hospital, assuming her recovery continued. Word of this arrangement spread quickly among their friends and family. Most were shocked at Priya's willingness to care for her ex-husband's baby with another woman. Some called her a saint, others questioned her emotional well-being or suspected ulterior motives. But those closest to her understood this wasn't about Robert, it was about creating stability for Aiden and his sister, and about being the kind of person Priya wanted to be. Teresa was discharged from the hospital 10 days after her collapse. She was weak and needed to avoid physical exertion, but the immediate danger had passed. The day after she came home, she called Priya. I don't even know how to thank you, she said, her voice still thin from her ordeal. What you're doing for Maya, for all of us, it's more than anyone could expect. You don't need to thank me, Priya assured her. Maya is Aiden's sister. That makes her family to me too, in a way. There was a pause before Teresa spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. I always worried, you know. That you resented me for being with Robert after what he did to you. I would have understood if you had. Maybe in the beginning, Priya admitted. But not for a long time now. You've been good to my son, Teresa. That's what matters to me. As July melted into August, their unusual arrangement continued. Maya began to recognize Priya, smiling and cooing when she entered the room. Aiden took his role as big brother seriously, proudly helping with small tasks and entertaining his sister with silly faces that elicited her first real laughs. Dev continued to be a steady presence, often coming over in the evenings to help with dinner or bedtime routines. He showed a natural ease with Maya, unfazed by the complexity of the situation. Most men would find this whole scenario too weird, Priya remarked one evening as they washed dishes together after putting both children to bed. Dev smiled. Maybe. But most men haven't learned what really matters in life. Seeing how you've handled this, with such compassion and grace, it only makes me admire you more. As summer began to wane, Teresa's health improved steadily. By mid-August, she was able to handle more activity, though still with limitations. When Robert brought Maya home each evening, Teresa could hold her and participate in her care, even if she couldn't manage the physical demands alone. One warm Sunday afternoon, about 6 weeks after Teresa's hospitalization, Robert asked if he and Teresa could stop by Priya's apartment. They arrived with Maya and a bouquet of flowers, Teresa looking much improved though still thinner than before. We have something we want to ask you, Robert said after they had settled in the living room. Teresa nodded, cradling Maya in her arms. My recovery is going well, but the doctors say it could be 6 months to a year before I'm back to full strength. My mother can only stay another week. We've been talking, Robert continued, and we're wondering if you'd consider a more formal arrangement. A kind of shared custody for Maya, similar to what we have with Aiden. It would help us immensely, and it would keep the siblings together more often. Priya was stunned. This wasn't a temporary crisis measure anymore. They were asking her to essentially co-parent both children. "We know it's a lot to ask," Teresa added quickly. "And we understand if you need time to think about it. But seeing how Maya has thrived in your care, how Aiden loves being with his sister, it seems like it could work for everyone." Priya looked at Dev, who had been quiet during this conversation. He smiled encouragingly. "It's your decision," he said. "But for what it's worth, I think you're wonderful with Maya, and I'm on board if this is what you want." As Priya considered the proposal, she thought about the journey of the past 5 years. From the devastation of Robert's abandonment to this moment, being asked to help raise his child with another woman, was a path no one could have predicted. The situation that had once broken her heart had expanded it instead, creating space for more love, more connection, more family than she had ever imagined possible. "Yes," she said finally. "I think we can make this work." The relief and gratitude on Robert and Teresa's faces was immediate. As they discussed logistics and schedules, Aiden played on the floor with his toys, occasionally glancing up at the adults with curiosity. Maya slept peacefully, unaware of the unusual family circle forming around her. Later, after Robert and Teresa had left, Priya stood at her window watching the sunset. Dev came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You know what amazes me most about you?" he asked softly. "What's that?" 5 years ago, when Robert left, no one could have blamed you if you'd become bitter or closed off. Instead, you chose to keep your heart open. And look what's come from that, not just healing, but something entirely new and beautiful. Priya leaned back against him, watching as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. "Sometimes the things that hurt us the most lead us exactly where we need to be," she said. "Even if we can't see it at the time." As darkness fell over the city, Priya thought about the road ahead, complicated, unconventional, but filled with love. 5 years ago, she could never have imagined standing here, part of this expanded family that defied traditional boundaries. But sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive in packages we never expected, after journeys we never would have chosen. And that, perhaps, was the most shocking turn of all.